ToolCASE, the retail banking industry's preferred choice for real-time risk management and fraud detection.
Hey, welcome to another Fraudcast episode. I'm your host, Sam Piccolotti with ToolCASE. Today's guest, you may be familiar with. She's been a longtime voice in the fraud prevention world and a strong advocate of the ToolCASE Rembrandt AI solution. Eveline Tenczar, AVP of BSA and Fraud at Launch Credit Union in Florida. Eveline, great to see you again, as usual.
Great to see you, Sam. How have you been?
I've been good. I'm going to ask how you're doing, but I've already got the sense that you've been busy with fraud still.
Fraud's picked up quite a bit. I'd say up 400% over last year.
Wow.
It's moving along. Yeah.
Wow. So I'm gonna ask you about that. 400% over last year. You are okay, and for the folks that don't know, Eveline, I think it was last year, we were part of an American Banker article that was published, and you had some phenomenal savings that you were able to, I want to say boast about, but I know that's hard to do when you're looking at increases of 400%. I'm curious how you're tracking the 400% increase.
I think last year's number, Sam, when we talked, was about 2.6 million, and we've already passed that.
Now that's 2.6 million.
6 million and saved, prevented fraud. Yeah, those are items that were returned to us, checks that we put extended holds on due to the tool, just fraud in general that we were able to save from leaving the institution, money from leaving the institution. At the end of May, we had already passed that number.
That's fantastic.
So
I want to talk because, frankly, you're an anomaly in the industry. I talk to banks and credit unions on a daily basis. I have a pretty good sense, as I know you do, as to what the industry is bringing forward in solutions and what the methodology, fraud prevention methodologies have been. There's not been a lot of advancement over the past couple of decades. There's still, from my opinion anyway, still a lot of legacy approaches to try to mitigate this. Yet, you're seeing a 400% increase in fraud attempts. It's certainly blown up. And we look back to the pandemic. We've talked about this before, but if you were a bank in that time frame, you were rushed to try to get your digital banking products forward to your consumers. And today, that has just made the marketplace for banks and credit unions more competitive. You've got to bring those digital banking products forward if you want to be able to serve your consumer base, right? But with those products come a myriad of additional risk. And you as a financial institution have to look to those in advance of bringing and onboarding those products and look at the operational impact and risk. That's a huge commitment. And what I'm seeing as one of the most difficult steps for financial institutions is identifying those risks, wanting to keep up with the digital banking product needs and demands of your consumers, understanding those risks and being able to put a risk assessment and really a plan together to not just identify the best solutions like a Rembrandt AI product, but also make sure that you have identified the needs for resources and training. And I'm curious, you guys are about just under 2 billion in assets, maybe?
Yeah, we're about 1.4.
Do you mind talking about your departmental approach to managing this onslaught of fraud and how you have structured internally to be able to support that? If you're willing to share, I think it's an incredible message for others.
I think the most important thing is that you have to have a proactive approach to fraud. If you don't have a proactive approach to the fraud that's going on in today's world, you're just going to lose money. And there's nothing that you can do to get it back. I'm going to be honest with you. even the fraudsters, we had a situation on Friday. The fraudster said they're not going to do anything. Law enforcement's too busy to come do anything. So if you are missing the proactive approach to fraud with real time tools, that's your biggest mistake. The the next thing is I visit all the branches. I do quarterly training with the branches. I visit every new hire class that we have, and we do fraud training there. My staff's up to speed with what the current trends are happening. You can still balance, and I think one of the things that a lot of financial institutions want to do is balance that member service act. You can still have a great member experience. It's how you deliver that message to your members, right? That you're there to protect them, protect us, and is following the you're getting the alerts in that real-time tool if you have a real-time tool. And that's the biggest mistake a lot of people have, is that they're not using real time. We get the alert, we place the extended hold, we reach out to the member, and we find out that, hey, they were involved in a job that they applied on LinkedIn and they got the money, a check in the mail, and these are long-term members. These aren't all new accounts, right? A lot of people are just thinking that everything they see online is real, and it's not. But the real-time tool is what's helping us. And then obviously the training that we do with our frontline staff and the new hires. But the amount of fraud coming in is a lot. It's a constant battle, right? And keeping up with the trends.
And you're not unique in that. It's not as though, the Launch Credit Union is a primary target. Everyone in, 12 some odd thousand financial institutions
Hmm.
in the nation, they're all dealing with this. You mentioned the training, you mentioned your team's ability to be able to interact with the front line and provide that training. That requires the buy-in from their leadership, right? To be able to have that time spent. They've got other goals that they're trying to keep in mind. So as a former banking leader, this takes me back to the question. You said proactive, but I'm also very suspect that you must have executive buy-in and commitment to being able to open up the opportunities for you and your team, who are the experts in this fraud area,
Hmm.
to work with the folks in the operational sales side, to educate them and make that part of their
Hmm.
job.
Definitely. Our executive team is all on board with the way the departments run, how we send the message out, how we work our alerts. They're very supportive. If you don't have that, I I wouldn't work here if I didn't have that. I can tell you that. Because without that executive management team supporting you, you're not going to be successful. It's impossible, right? Because you definitely need their buy-in, and the message comes from the top. As long as they can buy into how you want to work the department and run the show, basically, right? But you have to have, again, Sam, the most important thing is a real-time tool. And not only just the real-time tool, is the ability to change your alerts at the drop of a hat, right? The trend changes. I have to change the alert. I have to, you know, maybe add a new alert in the tool. I have to be able to do it myself. I don't want to be dependent on reaching out to the vendor and say, "Hey, we're getting hit with fraud. What can we do?" That's just not going to work either for me. So, I, again, the proactive approach comes from what tools are you using, and do you have the buy-in from your executive management?
Yeah, I get it. In so many of our operational practices and changes,
Hmm.
they are driven by new technology, right? So, you identify new technology, gives you new capability, you adjust operationally, you make those changes, and it makes complete sense. Of course, we understand the real-time benefits, the automation, the use of AI today, and how it can speed up things, and the integration needs for systems, which is, I'll tell you from vendors' perspective, something that, again, I see the industry. When I say the industry, I'm not talking about just vendors, but banking core providers who are struggling with their core systems being able to have open enough environments to have the integration. we've been fortunate here to have a really strong development team to be able to identify how to get around those challenges and have the real-time integration capability with certain bank core systems. But I can tell you that not all banking core systems are there. You guys are operating on the correlation keystone core,
Yes.
which is certainly a force in the industry today and provides a good open environment. So those financial institutions that are listening, I see a couple of steps, right, that have to be required. One is first understanding and identifying your banking core system's capability. Then looking at the market opportunities, searching for a solution like the Rembrandt AI real-time solution, and mutually having that executive commitment and prioritization to take a proactive, if you've mentioned several times, take a proactive step at addressing this fraud. Because coming back to the numbers you had indicated earlier, 2.6 million and growing, I'm gonna guess you guys are gonna be well over 3 million, probably closer to 4 million in savings this year.
For sure.
That's a huge impact. You have maybe 80% of the nation's credit union institutions sitting under $500 million in assets. You can't afford to lose $4 million and not pay attention to that on a revolving basis. You just can't compete and make up those type of profits on the front end.
Correct.
But it makes for a tough challenge, right? To understand that, adopt the changes. Tell me, if you would, how long, may I ask, are you at launch?
6 years.
And 6 years in the same capacity?
I switched into the management role in the last 4 years, 5 years.
So you came in with expertise and
I
background.
did. I was with a different financial institution where I was the BSA officer and fraud manager, and just took a step down just to make a shift.
Got it. But
So,
you obviously, being the lead person in this area, have had success in influencing leadership to give you the tools, the commitments that you need. How would you advise your peers in the industry, those folks that are, in the trenches, combating fraud, to gain that commitment from leadership teams? What conversations do you think need to be had?
so for me, I think the biggest thing was, obviously I came over here and they knew me, so they knew my history. But for me, if you have the numbers and you can show the data, there shouldn't be any executive management team out there that's not willing to support that, right? Because if you could get a real-time tool um, that can stop that, why wouldn't they want to do it? It pays for itself within 90 days, and in some situations, it could pay for itself in 60 days. You could probably pay your 3-year contract if you had a 3-year contract in 3 months, right? It just depends. Because I can tell you that, and I have a lot of cases with law enforcement, but they'll tell you they will not take a case unless it's a single, uh, per incident, sometimes $50,000 loss per incident. That's a lot. And typically you're not losing 50,000, right? You're losing
Yeah.
a $10,000 check, $15,000 check, $20,000 check. And there's a lot out there. I was recently surfing TikTok for I just go out there just to see what vulnerabilities are out there, right, with financial institutions. And it amazes me how that number increases, the number of posts out there on how to basically um, it, get through the system, let's say, right?
You're saying TikTok,
TikTok videos, yeah, and
promoted
Instagram
videos.
promoted videos, yeah. And it's interesting because I look at it and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, th- this is crazy, right? And if you're not willing to listen to your fraud people, then those numbers aren't going to matter. You have to support your fraud team at the end of the day, or you're going to lose a lot of money, and it's just going to continue to get worse. It's not going to get better from here. I feel like
Wow.
the
Right.
pandemic, basically everybody stayed home and we thought of new ways on how to make money. And it obviously wasn't the legal way, and those people got smarter. They got tech savvy. I don't think that they were that tech savvy prior to. Artificial intelligence is another thing, right?
Right.
That's kind of skyrocketed. That's a double-edged sword. That's good and that's bad. We've had some cases with that. I really think that um, there's a couple things here. You have to have your executive management team. You have to have some frontline training. Your team, your fraud team has to understand the current trends going on. They're not only the current trends. Get out into your market. You need to make those connections with law enforcement too, right? Because they're going to tell you what other trends are out there that you may not hear about on the news. And I think that's what maybe sets me apart, right? I have
I
all
was
those
just going to ask
connections.
you about. I was just going to ask you about that. You mentioned a law enforcement piece. It sounds like you work pretty closely with law enforcement, and that sounds like a critical piece. You mentioned, how overextended they are, and their, you know, I don't want to say unwillingness, but their incapacity to be able to deal
Hmm.
with smaller fraud cases, which can add up and be very problematic. Tell me about your relationships, that you've developed, and what you think is critical or important for other financial institutions in taking steps to establish those relationships with law enforcement.
I really think that you need to find your local groups that are law enforcement groups. They're out there and they want financial institutions to understand what trends are out there, but you have to also seek them out. They're not always publicly known, right? I know I'm part of a few groups. I work with federal agents a lot. I work with state and city, and it's just you have to be willing to work with them and have that close knit where they're going to tell you. I mean, I can reach out to one and I'll say, "Hey, we're seeing this. What's out there?" Not only will they go, "Good to know that you're seeing that, and that puts something on our radar. I'll make sure to share the news," or, "Hey, pay attention to this new ring going on," right? So I try to stay 10 steps ahead of that and I make contact with them frequently. I go to meetings that I need to go to just stay well versed in it. Um,
It sounds
because if
like
you're
there's
not,
sounds like there's a lot of collaboration between the financial institutions, of course, and law enforcement in sharing what these trends are, keeping
mhm,
each other up to speed in that process. So those type of meetings, fraud
those
roundtables,
groups,
yeah,
mhm,
yeah, very, very critical to the success.
yeah.
Um, share with me and those that are listening today, viewing, what you would consider today's as some of the biggest problems that you're facing on the fraud side.
I would say one of the large ones is the phone calls with the spoofing of government agencies. We get them all the time. We've had to put some measures in place where any large withdrawals have to get approved through my department because you get a phone call. They say, "Hey, this is Customs and Border Patrol. We've intercepted a box with drugs and money, and it's addressed to you. In order for you not to lose your money in the bank, you're going to need to go withdraw X amount of money and go deposit it here." Well, typically the deposit here is a Bitcoin machine. And once you do that, you know as well as I do, that money that's gone. And that's one of the scariest things that people are actually falling for that. The other one is the Microsoft scam. They hit a link or they feel like they've, have a Microsoft malware or something, a hack. They'll hit another link, and they end up speaking to somebody who's not Microsoft. They think it's Microsoft. They've given them the remote access to the computer, and now they're moving money back and forth and saying, "Oh, you know, we've refunded money for this service you just paid. Make sure that you go to your financial institution and credit us back. Wire the money back to us." And really, what they've done is either moved money from a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, a credit card, or a savings account into that checking. And the saddest part about it is some financial institutions don't even ask questions why you're wiring this money out, right? We ask all sorts of questions. Um, we look at account activity. We go, we'll say, well, there's never been a wire. Why is there an outgoing wire now? You're 70-year-old. Who are you sending this wire to? Who are you? Why are you withdrawing a large amount of money? What is the purpose of the large amount of money withdrawal? And I say that loosely, but then let me fast forward to another type of scheme out there is the people looking for a job. And this is any age group, primarily older than 50s, your 60s age group, 60s, 70s. They're being convinced to open a business account. They don't open the business account. They have someone on the other end of a telephone opening a business account with SunBiz, which is our local state of Florida business organization where you register a business. And now this person's receiving small checks and they deposit the money into the account and they wire the money out, or they withdraw the money and they take it to a Bitcoin machine and they're receiving small checks under a threshold. So put that in perspective with a real-time tool, right? We identified that to be a situation that was happening in the branch. The checks were in the range of 750 to 800, definitely lower than a rule we had in place. So the nice thing about Remembrance is that I found out this was happening. I went in there, tweaked the rule, took me 30 seconds. I lowered the limit and we were done. For a fraud person, you have to be able to go in and work the system, not only from the alerts perspective, but you have to be able to tweak the system when you need to. Fraud doesn't have, there's basically, I can't wait to hear back from my vendor and say, hey, can you tweak the system for me? That doesn't work for me. That's probably one of my, I should say, one of the biggest things about Remembrance that I love, because on several occasions we've had to go in there and add a rule or change a rule, and it doesn't take anything but minutes.
Yeah, because the fraud patterns are so dynamic now.
Yep.
They're changing. I I saw something on Facebook Marketplace where you have an individual selling a vehicle. You get a so-called buyer that inquires, asks all the normal questions, and then asks if you have a vehicle report. Can you send them a copy of the vehicle report? They say they don't have one. Here's what I recommend. Send you a link to
Yeah.
a vehicle
Yeah.
report entity where you enter all your information, and there you go. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes, but people, believe it or not, they don't realize that they've just entered all their information into a potentially fraud scam or something. And it's a week later that now they're able to. So a week later, what happens with that is a week later, Sam, is that the member is getting a multi-factor authentication code for a reset of password.
Mhm.
See what I'm saying? So now you have a potential online hack. And with an online hack, what do you have, right? So when we see things like that, we just start locking things down. But again, it's that proactive approach. It's having the rules put in place to identify things like that.
It sounds like you also have the empowerment now ahead of standard processes with real-time capability to have very different conversations with your members
Mhm.
than in my experience, a lot of others where the consumer, the member, the customer is the person communicating to the financial institution that they've experienced fraud. Whereas you in a more proactive engagement are calling the member and addressing the member. That's still pretty unique in the industry.
That is probably the biggest thing that sets me apart. That's, and I say this every time I speak. If you don't have that proactive approach, you might as well just hand out the money, because you're not going to get the money back. And the proactive approach, the money's not going out. You don't have an upset. In reality, in the moment, you might have an upset member because you've placed an extended hold on something that you were notified of, right? But in 3 or 4 days or 2 days, even when that check comes back, and you explain it to the member, then hey, had we released that check and you taken that money and sent back half of it via money orders or whatever the scam is at that moment, in that moment in time. Um, you know, so from a member's perspective, yes, they're upset in the beginning that you place the extended hold. However, 2 or 3 days later, they're thankful, right? And they become your loyal members. I mean, I have members that will only deal with my team because they say, well, they saved me from a potential loss or they saved me from this. So I don't think it's a bad thing. For some institutions, some of my peers that I speak to at other FIs, they'll say, well, we're focusing on member service. So do we. We focus on member service because at the end of the day, you can focus on member service all day long. But if you suffer a loss, that member service just went out the window. Because
Yeah.
if they can't afford to pay you and you can't do a right of offset on what they call protected funds, you now have somebody that is not happy with you. And what's the biggest thing they're going to do is go out to social media and say they took a 70-year-old lady's social security check, or they took, you know, so
Yeah.
why not have the conversation ahead of time and build that trust?
Right. It's a lot more difficult to gain new members, customers than it
Hmm.
is to lose them. That's for
That's
sure.
that's for sure. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Um,
So you mentioned these type of scams. I know here we are again in 2025. Who would think? But check fraud.
check fraud has increased, but the
Yeah.
checks look great. The checks are I'll tell you, around Christmas time, a funny story is the biggest thing out there is on the dark web is all I want for Christmas is a postal carrier and his keys, right? And that's because they're getting into the blue boxes, into the blue mailboxes, or you know, the boxes at an HOA, like a housing development,
Yeah.
and they're stealing checks and they're washing them, but they look really good, Sam. Again, it goes back to training the staff. You have to train your staff on how to look at these checks, how to look at an account, review history. You have to have that constant training. And then, does it make sense? Those are my biggest things. Constant training, does it make sense? And for sure your executive management support. But check fraud has gotten out of control. I have to say, now we even see where they take a picture of the screen. They're emailing them to the individual, and you can see the screen in the background. And I'm
Ah,
thinking, who does that?
yeah.
But it's there, you know. And
Yeah.
those are mobile deposits. But we stop those all day long.
Check fraud, account takeover.
Account takeover. Hmm.
Yep. Another.
All sorts of stuff.
Yep. Yep. Um,
Yeah.
are you still seeing a large number of credit card fraud issues?
We put those rules in place about a year ago. Knock on wood, we don't get hit that often. We're able to stop things pretty quick. There is check fraud out there. It's not even skimmers anymore. It's just check fraud. It's just sorry,
Card fraud.
card fraud.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not even due to skimmers that much anymore. The skimmers have kind of been on the wayside a little bit, and I hate to say that too much, but you don't hear of those too often. The cards, I think, in some cases, I know I personally work some card fraud. In some cases, they're authorized transactions, and it's having that conversation. Did you authorize the transaction, and maybe you didn't get the product in hand? In some cases, it's did you authorize the transaction and you were scammed out of your money? Same thing with Zelle, right? Did you authorize the transaction? We were seeing where when the card was compromised, it was the grocery stores. They were buying the money orders or gift cards. We have a rule in place for that, so we stop that pretty quick. So we don't see a lot of losses due to that.
Are you doing much in the form of member communication or coaching or education to help them with these understanding and identifying these scams?
So we have a monthly newsletter that goes out, and there's always a little part in there that talks about fraud. We have our community We have a group of team members that go out and teach the community, and when it comes to fraud, they'll involve me, and we do a lot of public speaking. We'll even do it in the high schools. So we're sending the message out there, and then when there's a particular ring, we'll put something out on our digital channel, and not don't respond to unsolicited calls, or don't ever share your multi-factor authentication codes. I think that's probably one of the biggest issue that there is a lot of members don't read that, customers, they don't read that little message before that code, right? Someone's calling you, they want that code, you just share it. And that message clearly says, do not share this with anybody. If someone's asking you for this, it's a fraudster. They don't read that part. So,
Well, I've also seen with, certain entities, they're, of course, these scamming calls, right?
right.
Misrepresenting,
Hmm.
another organization and identifying what the, um, what their protocol is. We had a situation where, we thought, that we were getting, authorized phone calls about fraud, issues on our account, and then came to learn that that provider doesn't make phone calls.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they were able to misrepresent themselves even from an ID standpoint
Hmm.
on the phone, looking like the institution, but then in talking to the fraud department, that institution, they said, we don't make phone calls. So
Wow.
you're not even talking to that financial institution. So, I think about years back, the approach was, member education. You've got to
Hmm.
educate a member. And that certainly is, is a pillar of what a financial institution needs to be. It's just simply not enough, right?
Hmm.
Customers, consumers, members, some of them by intent, right? Are taking advantage of processes and gaps, and we have those, bad members or bad customers. But I think as a financial institution, I'm mostly impressed with, those institutions like yours that have taken the steps and measures, have those commitments, because education's not enough. You're not going to have the opportunity in the busy days and lives of your consumer to get in front of them and always make that business case. You can't rely on them always going to your website to look for notifications, right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
you've got to own it, right? You've got to
Hmm.
own that
Hmm.
process. As the trusted financial institution, take the position that, we're going to own this responsibility. Yes, we're going to do the other things. We're
Hmm.
going to educate. We're going to put the notifications out, but we're going to own it.
Right. One of the things we find is that once you become a victim of like a hack, let's say, once they're successful and you have sent them money, or you have allowed them to basically compromise either one account or another. A lot of people have different financial institutions. Once that happens, you're going to be a victim again. And I think for us, what we spend a lot of time educating our member: do not answer another phone call. They will change the phone number they're calling from. They'll represent themselves as us. You've noticed that throughout our phone call, we have not asked you for any identifying information. You called us, right? Or we called you back. We know that we're speaking to our member based on information provided. And I think one of the biggest issues is that oftentimes financial institutions don't educate the member, or they allow them to do things that are even outside of their normal behavior, because they're afraid of that confrontation with a member in the office, in the lobby. And I can tell you that I recently had to deal with somebody else's customer, because I work with law enforcement so often as far as with cases. They asked me if I could explain to somebody, as another financial institution's customer, if I could explain how she was able to lose all of her life savings. So the sad part about it was that there was so many opportunities for that financial institution to stop it. They even allowed her to withdraw an annuity through their financial advisor, basically all of it. I
Yeah,
mean, and it took 30 days for all this to happen. The sad part about it was that there was a multitude of opportunities for it to stop, and no one asked questions.
yeah,
So I think we have to do a better job as financial institutions to ask questions, not be afraid of having the conversation, not be afraid of upsetting members. There's oftentimes we have members that are in the office trying to withdraw money that's outside of their normal withdrawal limit. The first thing I say is, sure, can you tell me if you have an active phone call on your cell phone? Because typically there's an active caller on that cell phone. When they tell you they're not going to basically answer that question, or it's none of your business, you already know you have a problem. That member now needs to get put into an office with a manager and your fraud team on the phone, right? Once the fraud team gets involved, sometimes within 10, 15 minutes, you can identify that they're being scammed, sometimes a little bit longer, or sometimes you just say, well, unfortunately, we're not withdrawing the funds today. Everything you're saying is indicative of you being scammed. And in order to protect you, basically from themselves, we're not going to let you withdraw the money. So,
Yeah. Mhm.
and it's the sad part about it, Sam, is that a lot of people are doing that. And
I have not, personally, I've not had that experience. I've had a number of, in my
mhm,
personal banking, uh, accounts have had fraud. I've never had somebody take that unfortunate situation, turn it into an educational one to, to your point, be able to educate and prevent future occurrences because they're going to happen.
right. And
They're
it
going to happen.
will. Once you become a victim of these people, they will target you again because it was easy for them to take advantage of you, right? And
That's a,
that's
yeah,
sad, but it's the truth.
that's a very important statement.
Mhm,
Again, I commend you on that process. I think that's a fairly unique approach to the way you guys are serving your members, and it just makes complete sense. There's such
mhm,
huge value add to that in taking those unfortunate situations and turning them into a positive and educational one, where you're educating and building trust long
mhm.
term. Because you're competing, right? You're still
Right,
competing
right.
for these
Exactly.
members and for their
Mhm.
business. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, great stuff. Yeah, great
Yeah.
stuff.
The romance scams are definitely back. They had died down a little bit, but they're back and picking up. I think the holidays are coming up right around the corner, and I think they're picking up for that. I don't know. I mean, we joke about it, right, in the department, but everybody's fallen in love again, and we have some that fall for it, and in some cases, if we haven't suffered a loss to that, and we've been able to mitigate the risk with that particular member, excuse me, I won't close the account, right? But they have to go through me for any withdrawals. And they get upset and we limit their access, but it's funny because I'll get a phone call and they'll say, "Now, Evelyn, how long are you going to lock my account down? How long are you going to babysit my money? As long as you're in love, I'm going to babysit your money." And it's the funniest thing. But they'll call me and it's I think she's thankful, right? This particular one, I think she's thankful, but at the same time, I think she gets a little perturbed when she can't get access to that money. But at the same time, I think she's thankful
Yeah.
because you,
Well, I've seen,
unfortunately,
I mean, it hits, people on all levels. I've seen
hmm
some, high profile celebrities that have fallen for the same thing and have just been wiped out by, these romance scams. So,
yeah,
it's not just the unknown that are dealing
no,
with it,
it's
but
not the
they
unknown.
have to be sometimes very hard conversations to have
Yeah,
with people who are emotionally involved at that
yeah.
point.
I got to tell you, Sam, that's probably one of my favorite parts of the job is having these conversations with the
Yeah,
members. And
yeah.
probably because at the end of the day, if I've saved them from losing money, knowing what's happening out there with other FIs, then it's good. It's a
Well,
win-win
it's
for me.
yeah, it's not just money, it's shame, it's pride,
hmm
it's a lot of other things that go along with that.
hmm
So yeah, makes complete sense. And
Yeah.
and again, I don't know that everybody's taking that approach. So we see from an industry perspective, it, people, financial institutions, wanting to be as laissez-faire. When I say laissez-faire, I mean really as hands-off and as automated as you can be in this process. But it just doesn't it just doesn't stand alone.
That's
without it,
unrealistic.
right? Yeah.
That's an unrealistic approach for fraud. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've had people say that to me, and I've said, I challenge you, right? I'll challenge you on that, because that's not realistic. That's the most unrealistic um, approach that you can have. It's just not going to happen. I'm sorry. That is an argument I can have all day long, because it's just impossible. You you have to have support, you have to have real-time tools, and you have to know what you're doing. You cannot, it's impossible. I'm into streamlining things. Streamlining a lot of areas in a financial institution is important, but there are some things you cannot streamline. When you start streamlining some areas, you're going to get stuck in either a process that's missed, or you're going to suffer some losses. And I'm not, it's not something I'm willing to do.
Eveline,
Not for me.
if you were to kind of bullet point some of the, the top steps that a financial institution would need to take to improve their fraud mitigation and prevention strategy, what would you highlight those as?
I think I met you, Sam, back in 2013, and I think the way we went about it was at a conference or something. Somehow I'd heard about the tool, and I had to put it on paper. What were my losses? What was what were the losses? What was the cost of the tool? And what could I prevent in losses in order to, what was going to be the return of investment, basically? And I had the old handy dandy Excel spreadsheet, right? These are my losses due to checks. These are my losses due to external fraud. This is my losses due to cards. I mean, cards doesn't even fall under my umbrella, but the tool allows me to put rules in for these card transactions that are just crazy. So I was able to prove that. And I can tell you that back then, the organization I was working for was a $5 billion organization, 433,000 members. And those losses, I mean, within 3 months, I think we were able to pay for the 3 years contract we signed with you guys. So you have to have real time. If you need to prove the numbers, and I tell anybody this, if you want to prove the numbers, get your Excel spreadsheet. Everybody's anti-Excel, right? Because it's antiquated. The data speaks for itself. If put the numbers out there. These are my losses. Are you going to get the money back? No, you're not. You're not going to get the money back, right? These are losses. So you have to have the proactive approach. Use a tool that's going to give you the alert within 3 minutes, and save the money. Build the relationships with your members. They will appreciate it. They will appreciate it, because at the end of the day, the members are the ones depositing these checks for the most part. I mean, so technically they're responsible for that check. And if that check comes back, now you have a 30-year member that their account went negative because you failed them. You basically failed them when you could have educated them, or somebody on the back team. Maybe you had a new teller that took the check deposit, and the system said, hey, they've been with us 30 years. No need for a hold on the check. They can even cash it. You give him the money, the check returns in 2 days. Now he's negative, and he wants to know why you didn't know the check wasn't any good, because they don't get that we don't know that the check's no good, right? So now this member has been with you for 30 years. Well, guess what? He's not a happy member. Where I have rules in place, we get that check. The front line may put a limited hold on it. We get the alert within 3 minutes. We reach out to the member and we go, hey, Mr. Member, where'd the check come from? It's outside of normal account activity. What can you tell me about it? I sold something on Facebook Marketplace. Great. How much were you selling it for? $2,000. Why'd you get the check for $500? Oh, they gave me extra. For some reason, they think that money is just extra, right? So, and then they're paying for their own shipping. The carrier's going to call me. That's a fraudulent check. We're going to place an extended hold on it. If the check clears within X amount of time, great. If it doesn't, and they're thankful, Sam. That's the thing, is they're thankful for that. But you cannot use a tool that's not going to give you the alert till the next day, because in a situation like that, the teller's already released the check. The member's probably cashed it, or maybe already went to the ATM and withdrew part of it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
or they've cash apped it out or sent it via Zelle. Either way, the money's gone. So you have to have real time. For those financial institutions, they'll call me and they'll go, "What are you doing? How are you so successful?" And I just tell them all day long. I mean, it's easy for me to explain it to them, right? And I go, "Listen, you need to get a meeting with your executive management team because you can prove your data. Excel spreadsheet. These are check losses. These are my external transfer losses. These are my Zelle losses. These are my card losses. I can improve this, and I can improve it quickly with a real-time tool." And
And I want
that's
to thank you for that, for identifying, I think, the greater message to financial institutions, is the insight that you're sharing on the need to have the real-time capability, the steps that you can recommend taking to, if your executive team isn't already aware or on board, help bring the business case to them on the losses and what could be saved. And then, you spoke to a couple other things I wanted to highlight. The relationship you have with law enforcement, your approach with membership, I think is critical. I think that speaks to the commitment that you and Launch as an institution have to their membership. That's unique, that's special. But it's available to all institutions, right?
it is
If you want it.
definitely.
Yeah. Eveline, thanks so much for sharing today. I know that listeners and your peers certainly have an appreciation for the information. I thank you for the partnership and certainly look forward to seeing you again in the future here.
Sounds good, Sam.
Thanks a lot.
See you again. Thank you.
Because a better tomorrow starts with better technology today. Learn more about the ToolCASE suite of real-time AI products and how to protect your institution from fraud today.